Halal meat is a Muslim meat because I'm a Muslim.
You say a prayer before you kill the meat.
It has to be prepared. When it's cut, it has to be cut at the neck, so all the blood comes out of the animal. And you say Allahu Akbar before you.
You have to say a prayer before killing the animal, and you have to let the blood go back into the earth.
It's been sacrificed in the name of Allah, and so that it's holy for us to eat. I wouldn't eat anything that is not halal.
Do you know about halal meat at all?
A little bit. I used to live in Turkey, so I know a little bit about Islam, and obviously certain meats are not permitted, especially pork, of course. But also it's to do with how the meat is treated and how the animal's slaughtered, I believe.
Halal meat, I like it. I enjoy it.
Since food is an important part of our daily life, food laws carry special significance. Muslims are expected to eat for survival, to maintain good health, and not to live for eating. In Islam, eating is considered to be a matter of worship of Allah, like prayer, fasting, and other religious activities.
Thank you.
A Muslim eats to maintain healthy and strong physique, to contribute his or her effort and knowledge for the welfare of the society.
I like to welcome you to one of the biggest markets in London, and I'm very pleased that at the London Borough of Hackney we haven't got in this market any shop which will display the word halal unless it is properly and genuine halal. So you will not see a lot of sign on the butcher shops are describing themselves as halal.
Hackney Council in London is one of the leading local authorities in the UK to impose strict restrictions on signs presented either on the shop front or within. Dr. Yunus, التيناز and the team at the borough are working tirelessly to implement the recommendations and restrictions imposed by the Environmental Department and the FSA.
Yeah, hi. This is another butcher shop which I'm going to inspect today. Yeah, hello, how are you, all right? Yeah? Yeah, good man. What I'm looking for here is the traceability of these carcasses. I just make sure that there is a health mark that they got traceability coming from. All right, so I'm not going to ask him if they are halal or not because he's not advertising that he's selling halal here.
Hackney Council has been establishing their own shops, the mixing halal, not halal, halal, to take off the sign of halal meat.
Yeah.
Now, if I come here and I see halal is being erased, then I see boxes over there that says halal.
If he described that as halal,
Yeah.
and sell it in the box without opening the box,
Yes.
it can be deemed halal. Yeah, you can consider it as halal. But if this is halal, and he opened this and put it on cutting there, and the liquid and fluids from the haram killed meat or the non-halal meat contaminate the halal one, according to the scholars, it will render it as non-halal. Therefore, he is entitled to buy from wherever he wanted, but he cannot sell it as halal. You are not selling this as halal, are you? Yeah, you know this.
I make this complaint to the wholesaler. He said sometime company, whatever like the box, they're printing. That's only for printing from company side. Sometimes they're bringing it only in white box. Sometimes they're bringing in this box. That's the problem.
Okay.
So we don't sell it by halal name.
Yeah.
That's why we take off the sign.
If he sells this as halal, we have to make a traceability to the slaughterhouse that it is halal. You know, but he's not selling it as halal. He's not certified as halal. Therefore, you know, I'm not going to do anything about it unless somebody complain and tell me, no, he sold it as halal. Then he will break the law.
Most customer asking me, is it halal? We don't work in the Zabha factory. We only selling as a chicken. We don't sell it as a halal. we don't give you guarantee of halal.
Today, halal meat and meat products form a significant share of the British market. It is estimated that Muslims in Britain consume about 25% of the lamb meat, 200,000 sheep per week. Also, Muslims consume about 5 million chickens weekly. So what is halal meat?
Halal, as you know, is an Arabic word which really means lawful, permissible. And it is now increasingly, traditionally been used for purposes of meat, what is allowed, what is permissible to eat. But in a broad sense, it is anything that is permissible in Islam. When we come to meat, it's almost become a brand name. And when it comes to meat, what it is we need to understand the basics. Muslims are allowed to eat meat of certain animals, provided the aspects of animal welfare are adhered to. And that starts right from the beginning of the animal's life. We have to be very particular on how the animal is brought up, reared, grazed, and then how it should be killed with complete sort of respect, and should be fed and given water before the animal is slaughtered. It should not be slaughtered in front of other animals. And these are a number of requisites which one has to satisfy before the food is called, or the animal is said to be halal, as halal.
We have managed to put the word halal into the domain of Muslim community in the UK. And I would say that not nationally but internationally we have made it possible for people to understand that the halal can be produced either in meat, poultry and foodstuffs, not only in UK, but it also is being exported with Halal Food Authority's authenticity logo to various continents.
The Food Standard Agency is a government department. It does govern all aspects of food hygiene and labelling. The agency seems to agree that halal meat issue is an important one.
Halal meat, obviously from our perspective, is very, very important, because the principles of halal, namely the right principles in relation to animal health and welfare, and the principle that food has to be from when it's an animal through to when it becomes the meat that we consume, has to be handled properly, has to be treated properly, has to have the right standards of hygiene. That's fantastically good. And when you think that this was introduced many hundreds of years ago, and the standards and the things laid down are still exactly the same principles as we follow today, it really is. I mean, it really is a good example of how a religious teaching can remain a vitally important tool for us today.
Cows and sheep are fed nothing but pasture. This is the natural fed for animals for human consumption. A few years back, BSE was caused primarily by feeding and injecting animals with protein from other animals such as pig. BSE has cost UK taxpayers £38 billion. This is a staggering amount of money which can be invested in farms to produce or to make pasture available for our animals.
190,000 infected cows, and BSE cost United Kingdom £38 billion from the year 1990 to 1998. And the cause, yes, and the cause of this is that they became infected with an agent, something smaller than viruses. And this was because we fed these cows things that they are not used to.
Animal feed has become one of the biggest worry for the Food Standard Agency, DEFRA and the government. Holland is one of the biggest exporters of meat to the UK, and halal meat in particular.
In fact, the cows can eat bones, which we take and crush and triturate.
So that's the cause of the BSE?
Yes, the cause of BSE is that they have eaten abnormal food. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَرْعَوْا أَنْعَامَكُمْ, means that you have to let your animals pasture.
Okay.
And we don't let our animals, we didn't let our cows pasture. in the grass. We fed the animals food that even a lion cannot eat. Even a lion cannot eat.
We did have some problems a few years ago, which was in relation to chicken that was imported from the Netherlands, and that in some cases had, well, all cases had a lot of added water, but in other cases sometimes had proteins that were proteins from other animals. And some of that was described as halal, which quite clearly it couldn't be because of these added chemicals. And so there was enforcement action taken by local authorities at the time, and also this was taken up with the Dutch government to make sure that this practice was sorted out. And since then the European Commission have also provided new legislation in relation to addition of water to chicken and the fact that you can't add other proteins like proteins from pork or whatever into chicken. So but that was an example of a problem that did relate to the Netherlands, but a problem that you know, through enforcement action we've largely tackled.
Dr. Yunus التيناز has promised this to be a busy day.
Hello.
Due to the pressure and the demand of meat and its products, the animals get slaughtered and rushed to the shops of London and other cities and
This is another
towns.
butcher where, as I mentioned earlier, you don't find the sign of a halal here. They never claim their meat is halal. They never sell it as halal. Therefore, you know, on that side, we're not going to speak anything because, as I mentioned, the meat here is completely not halal. Also, you don't find any sign there indicating that the meat halal as well. Many butchers around the country, you'll find that Quranic verses, you'll find photograph of the holy Mecca and the holy Al-Madinah, but not here, because if there is a photograph for Quran on display, that means the shop is halal. This will give indication to the customers. Therefore, we don't see that here in the London Borough of Hackney. Yeah, from where you bought that one here, I cannot see any health mark on it. From where you bought it? Well, you know, doesn't mean, you know, where is the health mark? How many times I told you, if there is no health mark, don't buy it. How many carcasses like that you got?
How many pieces? 2?
Yeah, have you got how many like this?
2, 3.
Well, that one, you cannot sell this. All right, I need to deal with that later on. You know, there is no, look sir, if there is no health mark, you don't buy it and display it. With no health mark, that means it has no got any traceability. This is, you know, it could be illegally slaughtered. Yeah, and also it is emaciated. It is very, you know, discolored. How many carcasses have you got there, down in your freezer?
One.
Let me see, please. Can you take this down, please?
These 2, that's another tier of that one.
Yeah. Just if you take this out, please. There, take it out. Don't display this. It's very bad.
Okay.
Let me show it here. This is what is called hot meat, which is killed in the abattoirs, usually licensed abattoirs, and rushed hot to the markets of London. And by the time arrive to the butcher place, it is decomposing. It got slime on it, either no health mark or smudged health mark like this one here. And then, you know, this meat is unfit for human consumption, in my opinion. That sort of hot meat is usually sold over the markets of London as goat to the African community, while it is not. What he should put here, shoulder of mutton, for example.
In February 2006, the Dutch Ministry of Health organised a conference on the issue of labelling. Open market within the European community makes the issue of labelling difficult to police.
So we come back to the issue of labelling.
Yeah, it is an issue of labeling and also the issue of the process of halal. There is many, for example, a lot of halal meat which is described and certified as halal while it is not halal at all. Therefore, you know, we don't rely on the certifications because there is a lot of fraud in the certifications in the market. We only rely on places, slaughterhouses and wholesalers which we know that they are genuinely halal and label their meat or food is halal. But in this market there is no single butcher which will tell you that his meat is halal.
I know you've all been selling halal meat before and now you don't. What's
No,
the
because
reason
before,
behind it?
no for the reading, because I got some with the halal, which one is goat, sheep, lamb, chicken, something like this halal, but the only is not beef is not come halal.
Okay. What would you do in that occasion where you find that meat that you have bought and you're going to sell to people and it's not halal? What would you do then?
No, and he say the halal, I tell him, oh, it's not halal, this one is halal, this one is halal.
The fight against mislabelling, hot meat and illegal slaughter of animals is a national issue. Local authorities in the UK are doing all they can to crack down on these
activities. The message is going through and we have managed to keep the illegal meat out of the human food chain of Hackney. Our environmental health officers are determined that Hackney residents and visitors buy the meat which they deserve and buy the wholesome, fit meat. On the halal front, it is a national issue. There is misdescription of halal and about more than 95% of the meat in the market, it is not halal, even though it is described as halal.
If you look at our premises, where there will be restaurants or butcher shops, why is it to non-Muslims, they say that your halal butcher shops, for example, it needs a lot to be desired for, yeah? They're not clean, they're not hygienic.
The issue of hygiene for local authorities and Food Standard Agency is a major concern. Last year, according to the Food Standard Agency, there were 600,000 inspections were carried out by local authorities.
The local authorities are key enforcement agents. So we set the policy and introduce the legislation, and local authorities enforce it on our behalf. They are each independent, so they decide the detail of how they're going to do it.
Sure.
But we give them a framework and we monitor what they do to make sure that local authorities are performing satisfactorily, and we also audit, so we have a team of auditors who go in and check what the local authorities are doing to make sure there's consistency and make sure that the law is being properly enforced throughout the country.
Under the guidance of the Food Standard Agency, local authorities such as Hackney Council's enforcement team are issuing warnings and taking legal actions on this issue.
Any food fraud, whether it is misdescribing haram as halal or misdescribing ordinary food as organic, is a fraud. One happens to be aiming directly at people's pocket, the other is aiming at people's religions, but it's still a food fraud and we treat them all the same. Where there is a clear offence, we will look at it in terms of enforcement. We have a published enforcement policy which ranges from the very minor giving warnings where we think people have just made a genuine mistake, right through to the possibility of prosecution and the full penalty of the courts where there are serious and clear offences.
Sure.
People who persistently disregard the law or do so in such a large way, they're obviously affecting hundreds of people.
Sure.
The people that may well end up in the prosecution. A couple of ongoing cases at the moment, but mostly we have been able to persuade people to remove halal signs and stop claiming food as halal when it isn't. That is, the first level of enforcement. If any of those people had actually persisted and insisted on putting up halal when food obviously is not, that is when we move into the next stage.
The Farm Animal Welfare Council is the advisory body for the government on this issue. They have presented their report in 2003. Their claim was the way kosher and halal meat produced causes severe suffering to animals and it is inhumane.
That's very unfortunate because, well, some of the requisites that I've told you, just described to you just now, are actually requisites that are now being introduced. The government, for example, has an advisory body called the Farm Animal Welfare Council. It's a body which has the whole sole purpose of it is to look after the animal welfare, consider aspects of animal welfare and report advice to the government. Now that body, as its broad remit, has 5 principles called the 5 freedoms. And the freedoms are freedom for the animal from hunger or thirst, freedom from stress, freedom from fear of any sort. And these are all things that are already built. So this body is about, what, 40, 45 years old, whereas all these basic principles have been actually laid down to us from 1400 or plus years. And so I think humane slaughter, a humane sort of treatment of animals is so ingrained and inbuilt into Islamic culture and Islamic religion.
The common method of animal slaughter in the UK is by pre-stunning. The methods employed are captive bolt pistol and electric stunning.
At the moment, certainly in the UK, what I can say is that we've got stunning and mechanical killing. What mechanical killing is, it means that there is no Muslim slaughterman inside, i.e. there's a machine, the blades go around and they're producing, it could be 100,000 a day. In terms of poultry, they're slaughtering by the machine. In some organisations, some slaughterhouses, they actually got Bismillah Allah Akbar on the blades. There could be a picture. In some countries, they play a tape and perceive that to be okay. This is happening in the UK as well. The other system where there is is that there is stunning and also hen slaughter. Now, more and more, we are working, there's more and more slaughterhouses that's coming along, predominantly now by their Muslim slaughterhouses, but we are doing a lot of work in terms of trying to introduce the non-Muslim companies where they've done a lot of investment into these plants to do unstunning, do not stun. Alhamdulillah, there is a lot coming along now. It means educating the people, and they're coming along. Now, what it means is that the end user must fully understand what they're consuming. So everything that they see as being halal is either done through lack of ignorance by the operators or the slaughterhouses, or they've been told to do it this way, or they've done it for commercial reasons.
Whether nationally or internationally, defining halal meat will always be the case for debate. Authenticity of halal meat is a matter for the provider and the consumer to adhere to Islamic law.
There have been various authentication bodies. This is where the confusion within the UK and Europe, and in fact maybe worldwide, confusion comes to it, where one will interpret halal as being one standard, another organisation or authentication will interpret halal as being another standard.
You see, I mean, organization more than one is welcome, as long as we don't tread on each other's toes, and we work to expand the system so that not only that we have slaughtering a way only recognized, that we got to come into farming itself so that the right kind of animal can be and the birds can be provided for slaughtering. Then we need slaughterhouses owned by Muslim, run by Muslim. Then we need cutting plants owned by Muslim, run by Muslim.
We Muslims consume, it's the end user that dictates, because if we all said, well, I'm not going to eat stunned, or I'm going to, I'm not going to do that, then obviously the slaughterhouses and the processing plants will not have a market for it. I've always said this, but what we do is, if we say, well, unstunned is X price and stunned or machine slaughter is so price, What we find, most of the Muslims will go for a cheaper price. We're not like the Jewish community to say, well, I want halal, and this is the cost of halal. Yeah? Because obviously the halal process is a much more slower process, much more labor content than haram.
If the price is the major player in this, probably considering the health issue is paramount. Halal meat production is time consuming, therefore the cost will be greater than the non-halal meat.
The research which was done in Germany, in which a German professor, have actually taken the animals and take two groups of animals. One group that he slaughtered by the technique, the Islamic technique, and another group that has been killed by the non-Islamic technique. And he found out that when you slaughter an animal, in 1 second he loses consciousness, and the animal goes into convulsions, emptying the body and the flesh from all the blood. They found out that when you hit the animal with a blow on the head, the brain material travels into the vessels and go to the liver and go to the lungs and go to the spleen and will be isolated and present there.
According to Dr. Abbas' analysis, the blood plays a major part in diseases transmission from animal to human.
The blood, which is the vehicle of transmission of all diseases. Like I say, I used to teach 15 years ago that the blood transmits 175 diseases. Now this year I teach more than 400 diseases are transmitted to man from animals. And of course, how are they transmitted from any part of the animal to another part of the animal, except through the only channel, which is the blood. This is the highway, the motorway for everything inside the animal and inside man. So when you eat blood in it, then you're eating all the poisons, all the bugs, all the toxins. Everything is in the blood.
You mentioned about blood. In a situation where the meat is well cooked, would that prevent such diseases?
It might prevent diseases which can be killed by heat. But look at BSE. It doesn't even get killed with autoclaving. And we get variant CJD. And the variant CJD, when I have a patient with variant CJD, we destroy everything that we use for him.
It is against all odds. A Muslim population of 0.02% in the UK is consuming such a large proportion of red meat and poultry. Do you think this is very high?
Certainly that's high, disproportionately high, especially when you find out that it's about 10% or so of meat that is slaughtered, animals that are slaughtered, actually are slaughtered by the halal method, by the Viha. And yet, 25% of the meat that comes out of what is called halal outlet is 25% of the meat comes out of these halal. So there's some discrepancy. The mathematics is not quite right there, and that's a worrying situation. Number one, that points to the authenticity of the halal meat as a certification, but also the aspect of health that you said. Yes, and again, if we go to the Islamic principles, eating in moderation, what you eat, eating that is for health is important. And we get sometimes so digressed and concentrate our efforts on what is halal, etc. But actually, moderation in eating is also halal.
We eat too much meat, we don't eat balanced diet, and that is one of the reasons as well that the Muslim community in UK suffers with all kind of things. I mean, cardiac diseases, blood pressure, and even obesity at times, and also diabetes, which is much more common in the Muslims. See, it is because of the dietary principles are not being followed.
You are aware of the difference of views between the Muslim scholars on this. Is that why we have different standards in the UK?
I don't think so, but I think what we got to see, and this is what Halal Food Authority has been much more clear and transparent about it, and our openness is this, that unless we adopt technology along with Islamic Sharia.
Now, when you say adopt technology, what kind of technology do you think we should adopt?
The technological advancement, I mean, we have to stop thinking that we can only slaughter birds and animals one by one, like we used to. I mean, and I think slaughtering is done now for the poultry, 3,000 per hour to about 8,000 per hour. So that's the technology I'm talking about. There we can make it possible to say that the animal would be conforming to the Islamic Sharia. Islamic Sharia of Zibah law is this, that the animal should not be dead prior to slaughter. All the flowing blood, which is damman masfuhan, must be drained out of the carcass, and a Muslim should do the rendition of Bismillah Allahu Akbar, which is the Shahada.
As you may be aware of, the Muslims in this country consume around 5 million chickens weekly and around 200,000 sheep per week. Do you think the old methods will achieve these figures?
If we go back to the system which you mentioned, as it was done years ago and centuries ago, we will not be able to fulfill the requirement. It is not the case of fulfilling the requirement, it is the case first and foremost fulfilling the Islamic axiom, Islamic criteria. If we can fulfill that, then we can make the science and technology subservient. I mean, simply there are some people who are saying that we can adopt technology in any other thing. Reams and reams of books and papers have been written about Quran being scientific. But when it comes to application, that's what we don't want to do. And in this course as well, what I'd like to mention to you is that the other organizations should also come forward to say that we have had in the very recent past something called intensive farming. The intensive farming is in, if you like, ovine species, meaning lamb and sheep, in poultry, even in fish. How many people know that the fish actually in intensive farming is not only stunned but electrocuted, and we eat that fish? Now, how many people do know that the hormone giving to them were wrong as far as the poultry was concerned? Luckily, it's not done anymore. But what we are saying is this: look forward now. Intensive farming would be left far behind, because now the new subject is going to come, which is cloning. So we are still trying to beat the drums about how to kill an animal for the sake of zib.
I've been told by one of the providers here in the UK of halal meat that some slaughterhouses do have blades where they kill the animal, which they have the writing on it, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Allahu Akbar, and they tend to be, that is to be halal. Do you think that, do you agree, is that what you authenticate?
No, Halal Food Authority will not indicate any kind of slaughtering done on blades where things are written like Bismillah Allahu Akbar, or a tanai is actually on the wall, or repeated by a recorder or anything. What we need is this, that we need to explain to people is that fixed blade can be used, but Muslims should be there to do the rendition of Shahada, because, you know, as I mentioned to you, if the slaughterhouse is doing the slaughtering at 3,000 per hour or 4,000 per hour, so the machine is being used there. So machine meaningly, if it's being used, so it means in that time, 1 hour, a lot of chicken is passing through it. So we have to have a Muslim standing there doing the rendition. I mean, we know that rendition can be done by the Muslim all the time.
Do you think that is practically enough for someone to stand there and do all this rendition?
Yes, because the very fact is this, it's niyyah. I mean, so the intention is there. Actually, what is required is this, that the confirmation of the very fact that the animal or the bird has not died prior to slaughter, animal or the bird has actually drained all the flowing blood, and a Muslim, and I would insist that Muslim is not only a practicing Muslim, but also a Muslim who has been approved by the meat hygiene service to do the slaughtering, must be the one standing there, so that any bird or any animal which has been missed out can be slaughtered by hand, so that all the covenant are being met when the slaughtering is done.
A portion of people are not aware of some of halal meat produced in the UK is pre-stunned. Do you think that's the case of some slaughterhouses? They use the method of pre-stunning and their meat is halal?
Well, you see, first of all, viewers should understand what is stunning. Stunning is of three kinds. One is gas stunning, in which we do not know whether the animal dies or doesn't die.
It's not been used anymore, isn't it?
Well, I'll hasten to add that in Germany, Muslim ulamas are actually allowing that, and Halal Food Authority would not allow it. Then the other kind of stunning is a captive bolt stunning, which is actually used on cattle. Halal Food Authority would not allow that either, because both of these methods are irreversible, because the animal would die anyway. Now only electric stunning is left, which is two kinds. One is dry stunning and one is a water bath stunning. Dry stunning is used on the ovine species, meaning on lamb or sheep, and on poultry is used the bath system, water bath system. Now if you imagine that the stunning of this kind is being done, if you imagine that animal are being hung upside down, so they have to be restrained somehow. So the animal is only immobilized. It would not die, because even after the current is passed through the body, that would be able to be revived. It means they would still be breathing, they would still have their all senses in there, although it would be dazed a little bit. Now having done that, it means that if people want, and I have answered this question many times before, if they want that Halal Food Authority approved poultry and meat is stunned, then we can actually put in packaging to say meat slightly stunned.
But do you approve stunning?
As I mentioned earlier, yes, control is stunning. And our motive, and our criterion right from the beginning of our launch has been no stunning to kill the animal.
I've been told by the Animal Welfare Council that all the slaughtering that take place in New Zealand is being pre-stunned. Now, is this your case, the stunning, or is it been killed beforehand?
Well, alhamdulillah, that having visited and having spoken to all the almost all the slaughtering authorities official there, and this is why we reciprocate with them as well, to say that they are applying the same methodology as I iterated earlier, meaning animal would not die because of stunning. And that is, this is the reason we have always said that the Muslim ulamas must come together in this, to say science and technology is possible to be used in our function of halal and zib, because it is important to understand, be open, be sort of much more into the very fact where we can do the research. Come forward and see it, and just do not say that what was done before at the time was the right thing. Yes, animal welfare is much more important. I'd like to mention to your viewers as well that not only the halal slaughtering zib is important for us, what is important for us is meat hygiene. What is important for us is the very fact that meat which is coming out of the slaughterhouses, either here or anywhere, is it fit for human consumption? Is it actually coming to our table in that condition, or to our shops in that condition or not?
Hackney Council is actively working in partnership with other organisations such as DEFRA, local mosques and the Central Mosque in Regent's Park to promote awareness of the issue of halal meat and food hygiene.
Meeting our community's needs is important across our diverse communities, but I'm very much aware of the fact that a quarter of the population of Hackney actually describe themselves as being Muslim. So, it puts the halal meat agenda very high up as a priority to be able to provide that for the community. In fact, the Halal Meat project that we're running at the moment has very much been in partnership with the London's Central Mosque. So there's a number of ways that people do actually feed back through to us, and myself being a Muslim counsellor as well, that people do actually come forward to myself and a few of my other colleagues as well as Muslim counsellors.
There is one thing that the Muslim scholars differ on. Can we eat meat that is slaughtered by non-Muslims? Yusuf al-Qaradawi argues that the meat slaughtered by Jews or Christians, people of the book, is permissible for us to consume.
In the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, al-haramu bayyinun wal-halalu bayyinun wa baynahuma umurun mushtabihatun. هذه hadith مشهور. This is very famous hadith. Haram ve helal açık açık beyan edilmiştir. Hükümlerdir. Onu izah et.
Things that are halal are very clear, and things that are haram are very clear, and the things in between are the uncertain things, and those uncertain things we should always be kept away from.
That the Muslim community or the representative of the various Muslim organizations are currently looking at a standard, and inshallah we will agree a standard before too long, and we will be able to give it to the government and get it accepted so they could actually endorse it through meat hygiene service, endorse it into the plants, and this is that so that everybody can eat in confidence. And we're back to the thing again, you go in there and if it's the shop says halal or the butcher shop says halal, we go in there with clear conscience, we buy it, and that's it.
Is there a timetable within all these organizations to get together and pass on your requirement to the Food Standard Agency to imply or to apply?
Well, if you're referring to the code of practice, code of practice, I mean, ours was formulated, I mean, it is on our website, well, but we are trying to bring it together.
But what's the timetable for
that? As far as Islamic rules are concerned, either it is in slaughtering, either it is in producing and procuring meat, or in any other way. What is halal in London has to be halal in Jeddah, has to be halal in Chicago.
Now, is there any agenda, is there a timetable that tell us in 2008 or 2007 we're going to have a set thing to pass on to the Food Standard Agency to have this in place?
Yes, obviously, as the group is trying to rewrite, and I would think that anybody who is trying to write this kind of code of practice, if you like, then they have to look at all the code of practices from throughout the world, meaningly either from American organization, New Zealand organization, Australian organization, or even Brazilian or even Halal Food Authority, and then put it together and try to formulate one to see that it is generally accepted. Generally accepted in a sense that it is A, according to the Muslim Sharia, B, it conforms to the hygiene law, C, it conforms to the main law, which is, according to the definition of halal, it not only means permissible, it means three other things, which is wholesome, pure, and fit for human consumption. And you ask me when it would be produced.
Yes.
I mean, if I was writing it, alhamdulillah, I could have said to you that I can produce it by the spring next year. But since I'm not writing it, I'm only sitting on the committee, somebody else has been entrusted with the job, simply because what we want to say that he or she, whosoever is writing it, first reads everything else possible there, and then reformulates or rephrases it and tries to present it to the group, Muslim group, so that we can come to a conclusion and then say this is the code of principle, and that will be given to the Food Standard Agency.
So, what date?
Well, I do not know.
Is there a date or there is no date? I can assume there is no date.
There is no date.
But we have to work on a date. We are in a world which everything goes by date. And the viewers of this program want to know, you're going to pass the message on our behalf to this to the Muslim this community working group. We need a date. Now, are you going to be working with them on this as you are a member of it, or you're going to be passing the message for us?
Well, I'll do both. As a matter of fact, I'll do both, because I think it is in our interest generally to see that we come to a consensus, we come to an opinion where everyone is working on the same methodology. We cannot work on divided system. It is not possible, simply because the fact is, just as I mentioned to you earlier, as far as the definition of halal is concerned, as the status of halal is concerned, is universal. It can't be changed. So what we got to bring into this is say, how much can we say this is the Muslim operation here? Because if it were the operational manual being written in Australia, or being written in America, or now is being written in the UK, it should be the same, or similar at least.
Halal meat will always be an issue that haunts us, whether we live in the West or Muslim country. Globalization of the world market and the demand of such product will make something of the financial rewards rather than of the honor of the seller or the buyer of halal meat.